Now, speaking about a consistent house style, that brings us rather neatly to the wine that we have in market right now. That is the non-vintage Brut Reserve Exclusive. Tell us a little
Yes,
bit about that wine. I think that's your biggest production wine.
it is. It is. It's our flagship. It represents 80 to 85% of our production.
Right.
So it's quite important, and it's always a blend of more than 200 crews, 200 villages, and it's made with about 35 to 45% of reserve wine in average.
Hmm.
All of them are coming from 5 different years at least on each grape variety. So it's a blend of 40% of Pinot Noir, 40% of Meunier, and 20% of Chardonnay. Meunier gives the I would say the silky part and the citrus and yellow fruit taste. The structure and the red part fruit is given by the Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay is there for the freshness and the kind of elegancy and the delicate structure. So it's been aged for 3 to 4 years in our cellars, and thanks to that, we have a kind of a specific bubble, very tiny, delicate bubble, which is one important quality for champagne. And then it's a non-vintage that you can have in any occasion, meaning that as an aperitif, but of course, but if you have celebration, but even on table, if you know, I was in Tokyo last week.
Yes.
If you want to have a champagne with sushi or sashimi, it's really good to have this kind of champagne. I would say it's the kind of champagne that can fit to anyone. So it's really interesting.
I was hoping to have a glass of it to share with you this morning,
Uh,
but that never came to be because it's been a year or so since I've tasted that particular wine. So I wondered if you could help me recall what the autolytic character is like on that wine.
um, the, the the important thing is the expression of fruit. It's always the brand. Our brand is based on fruitiness and freshness. The fruit is always, you know, it's not you have some reduced champagnes
Mhm.
on reduced aroma. It's not like that. It's really open on fruit, fresh. It's easy to understand. I would say it's an easy drinking wine, easy drinking champagne.
Would it be fair to
Uh,
say it's a very? I've always viewed your house as being a very modern, contemporary style of champagne.
Yeah, um, that's a way of expressing our modernity, meaning that it's quite accessible through the fruit,
Yeah.
and then the way of processing today is a bit different that it used to be, meaning that um, I changed the way of managing the reserve wines for a few years, nearly when I came back here, so nearly 10 years. The fact is that in Champagne, in general, when you manage the reserve wine, it's because you've been finished the blends, meaning that you do the blend with all your wines, new wines and reserve wines, and the ones that are not included in the blend are going to the reserve.
Yes. Yeah.
The problem is that some of them have no abilities to go in the reserve because they are not fresh enough, they are not structured enough, they are not expressive enough expressive. So it might be a wrong idea to put them in the reserve. The way we manage the wines now is that we taste all the new wines. In those wines, we decide the one that have the capacity of going for 1, 2, 3, 10 years in reserve. We don't know if it will be 10, but we know that at least
Yes.
it will be one. And each year we retest them to see if they will stay in reserve or be used as contribution for the non-vintage brut.
Because there's no point in keeping those wines if they're not going to add anything to the wine further down the line, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And then it changed a lot because some of them might have been the right wines to make an incredible vintage. The most important part to me is not the vintage. We can do vintage sometimes, of course, and it's important to make vintages. It's important to make very top cuvées, of course. But the most important thing is the 80 to 85% of non-vintage brut that we sell the whole year. And if we make mistakes on this, it's not possible to go the other way around and find solutions. So we have to preserve our all our possibilities to make sure that even with the not nice harvest, we'll be able to make nice non-vintage brut. And if you want to do that, you have to manage all the new reserve part ahead before blending. So you put the one that you decide to put in reserve, you put them in reserve, and then with the rest, you make the blend. If it's possible to make a vintage with these on top of the non-vintage, it's really good. Yeah. If it's not possible, too bad. You'll do more non-vintage and that's it.
So speaking of vintage, in about a month's time, we actually have a vintage Blanc de Noirs being released over here in Ontario. Tell us about that. That's quite a special wine.
It is. It is a Grand Cru. So Grand Cru is based on chalk. Chalk is really interesting because when you have a really hot weather and dry weather, the chalk makes sure that the water from deep in the soil will come up by capillarity. And if you have a lot of rain, finally chalk makes sure that all this rain, all this water will go down very fast, so that you will not have too many wet part around the roots of the vines. So it's really important. Chalk is really, it's kind of a thermostat. How do you say in English? Thermostat. Thermostat. Yeah. And that's really interesting because that makes sure that you have a large interaction between the roots and the soil. And that gives this kind of wine a high level of minerality. So this vintage Grand Cru Blanc de Noirs is made of 100% Pinot Noir, half part coming from north of La Montagne de Reims, north of La Montagne on very light inclination of the vines, and it's on the light sun exposure. So it makes Pinot Noir very delicate. I would say more feminine Pinot Noir, with no heavy structure. But on the south, so it's on the north, or it's Verzy and Verzenay, from two crus, Verzy and Verzenay. And on the south, it's coming from Ailly, Ambonnay, Tours-sur-Marne, and Bouzy. Those four villages are well known for more structured, more powerful, more spicy, I would say more peppered Pinot Noir. And that's really interesting to have this contrast between the north and the south, more matured on the south, more light and delicate on the north. And through 6 of 8 years of aging in our cellars, you have this very complex and very powerful wine that is really interesting on white meats, for example, or on veggies also. It's really interesting because it calms down the veggie contribution. So it's really interesting. It's also interesting with starters with some spicy into them. So it's a really complex wine that you can adapt to many different dishes.
Superb. I'm getting thirsty talking about all of these champagne.
I'm sorry for that.
That's no worries. Thank you so much for giving us such an in-depth insight into the world of champagne production at Nicolas Feuillatte. Really appreciate your time at Good Food Revolution, and hopefully at some point we can share a glass of champagne over here in Ontario.
I hope so. I would be very pleased if you come to Champagne, but I'm sure that next year I will go to your fabulous country and we'll take time to have a glass together.
I would love that. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great afternoon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers.